India is famous for chai, but what if I told you it's also one of the top 10 coffee producers in the world? Coffee has been growing here for over 400 years. It started with a smuggling saint, survived colonial rule, weathered global crashes, and today Indian coffee is facing its biggest challenge yet. So, how did we get here, and what makes Indian coffee so unique? Let's break it down. To understand where all of this coffee magic happens, we need to head south. Here, Karnataka is the undisputed coffee king, producing whopping 71% of India's coffee. And within Karnataka, one place alone steals the spotlight, Kodagu or Coorg, which grows about a third of country's entire coffee. But before Coorg became the land of plantations and weekend getaways, coffee in India had a much humbler and sneakier beginning. Our coffee journey begins almost 350 years ago in the town of Chikmagalur, often called the birthplace of Indian coffee. But the real story starts even earlier with a Sufi saint named Baba Budan. Back in the 17th century, Baba Budan was on a pilgrimage to Mecca when he discovered an aromatic drink that the locals were obsessed with. But there was a catch. Arab traders had monopoly on coffee. Exporting raw beans was strictly forbidden. This is where the smuggling part comes in. Legend says he brought 7 raw coffee beans from Yemen. Some say he hid them in his beard, others say he taped them to his stomach. Either way, he made it back to India and planted the beans in the hills behind his home in Chikmagalur. This little act kickstarted the whole coffee industry in India. By the early 1800s, coffee had caught the attention of European colonial powers. The Dutch tried it first, but it was the British who went all in. They saw the lush hilly terrain of South India and thought perfect for plantations. And just like that, coffee estates started popping up across Coorg, Wayanad, Mysore and Travancore. In fact, one ambitious British manager convinced the Mysore government to give him 40 acres of land to start what would become India's first organized coffee state.
It was a very sustainable way of farming where people went into the forest, they did not touch the native trees, they cleared the space in between the native trees and started growing coffee.
Over time, Coorg became the heart of India's coffee production. British planters loved the cool climate, abundant rainfall, and the well-drained soil. But it wasn't just the British. Local small farmers, especially in places like Mysore and Coorg, also joined the coffee game. They often grew coffee alongside pepper and rice paddy, which helped them survive tough times. Meanwhile, in areas like Travancore and Malabar, coffee didn't do so well. European planters initially took the lead there, but many gave up when the market crashed and diseases spread. This tells us two things. Coffee thrived in places where it was grown by smallholders with flexible farming practices and with minimal outside interference. But wherever it was treated like a monoculture cash crop, it failed to survive. Let's start with something you probably didn't know. Indian coffee is not just a beverage, it's a conservation opportunity. Most of India's coffee comes from Western Ghats, one of the world's biodiversity hotspots. Think of it as the Amazon of India, but hillier. Now, here is the twist. Unlike countries like Vietnam or Indonesia that often grew coffee in full sun for high yield, Indian coffee is traditionally grown under the shade of native forest trees, sometimes right next to the sacred groves or reserved forest.
If you see from outside or if you do an aerial drone shoot of most of the Indian estates, it look like forest, it will not look like farmland.
This means our coffee farms don't just grow beans, they double as wildlife corridors. Now, you might know this already, but a coffee bean is actually a seed. If you don't roast it, you can plant it and grow your own tree. Coffee starts off as a small green fruit called a coffee cherry. As it ripens, it turns to deep red and ready for harvest. There are two main types of coffee beans that India grows, Arabica and Robusta. Let's start with Arabica. It grows at higher altitude, has a smoother, more complex flavor and less caffeine. But it's also more sensitive to weather and pests, which makes it harder to grow. Robusta, on the other hand, is the tough guy. It grows at lower altitudes, has a stronger, more bitter taste, more caffeine, and is preferred in espresso blends for that extra kick and crema. This is the type of coffee bean that's used to make instant coffee you probably drink every day. In India, Robusta makes up around 72% of the production, while Arabica is about 28%. After the harvest, there are two main ways Indian farmers process coffee. The dry method, also known as natural method. Cherries get sun-dried on big patios. They are turned regularly so they don't spoil. Then there is a bit modern wet method, also known as washed method, in which the pulp gets removed by hulling with a lot of water and the bean is dried with just the parchment layer on it. But there is one additional method that's India's signature offering to the global coffee world. It's called Monsooned Malabar and it comes with a backstory. During the British Raj, green coffee beans were shipped from the Malabar coast all the way around Africa and finally reached Europe. But here is where it gets interesting. Those long sea voyages took months. The wooden ships were not airtight, obviously. And during the monsoon season, the beans were exposed to heavy humidity and salty sea winds. Over time, the green beans would swell, turn pale yellow, and develop a mellow, earthy flavor. European buyers got used to this unique taste, basically coffee aged by the sea. But as faster steamships and the Suez Canal came along, the route shortened. The beans no longer got sea aged and the flavor changed. So Indian producers got creative. They began recreating those sea conditions right here on land. During the monsoon months, beans are laid out in open warehouses along the coast, where the rain and sea winds do their thing. The result of that is the bold, low-acid coffee that tastes aged, smooth, and totally different from anything else. The roasting is where green beans become beautiful brown and aromatic. First, the green coffee beans are poured into a big hopper, basically a large basket on top of the roasting machine.
We preheat the roaster first and manage the internal temperature and get it to adequate amount of heat.
From there, the beans drop into a rotating drum. This drum spins constantly, making sure the beans keep moving so they roast evenly.
A green bean holds a lot of moisture and a lot of water content. So for anything to dry, it becomes yellow first before it goes into the blackened or the brown phase.
The roaster keeps an eye on the beans through a small viewing window, checking their color to decide whether they want a light roast, medium roast, or dark roast. Roast it light and you get floral notes. Roast it dark and you unlock bold, smoky flavors. Once the roast hits that perfect level, the beans are dropped into a big cooling tray. This tray has a mesh bottom and fans underneath that blows air. If the beans are not cooled quickly, they will keep roasting by their own heat and that could mess up the flavor. Once the beans are roasted, they are ground based on how the coffee will be brewed. Fine grind for espresso, medium for filter coffee, and coarse for French press. The grind size affects how quickly water flows through the coffee and that's what shapes the final flavor in our cup. But before that bag of coffee even reaches our home, every batch is tested again and again. This process is called cupping.
We use cupping, a method in which all the variables, all the factors of actually brewing coffee are standardized and we are able to taste each and every coffee at the same temperature at the same time, for which we get to know which coffee is better than the other and which coffee has what kind of flavors.
Experts taste the coffee, sniff it, slurp it, and grade it like the judges at a reality show, but for coffee beans. This is where coffee turns political. In the 1700s and 1800s, colonial cities like Madras and Calcutta had European-styled coffee houses, but they were off limits to Indians. Then in 1930s, the Coffee Cess Committee opened the first Indian coffee house in Churchgate to make coffee accessible to Indians. By the 1940s, there were nearly 50 branches across British India. But the real story begins in 1950s when the Coffee Board suddenly tried to shut down these coffee houses. It's when a group of passionate workers led by communist leader A.K. Gopalan staged a protest. They fought to save these places and won. The workers took control and relaunched them as worker-owned cooperatives. That's how the Indian coffee house as we know it today was born. During World War II, global trade routes were blocked. That meant India faced a serious coffee shortage.
They figured out this chicory root, which could be roasted and it tasted almost like coffee but non-caffeinated. They started adding chicory to the coffee brew to bulk it up.
That's the secret behind the rich, earthy taste of South Indian filter coffee. Even today, around 70% of packaged coffee in India still contains some chicory. Partly for the taste, partly because it's about 10 times cheaper than actual coffee beans. These days, there are all kinds of home coffee brewers out there. But in India, this manual brewer still takes the cup. This is a traditional South Indian filter. It's a two-part metal contraption that looks like stacked cups. The top one has holes for coffee to drip through. Let me show you how to make it. Load fresh coffee grounds into the top part. Press them down, pour hot water, and let gravity do its magic. The coffee will slowly drip into the bottom container, creating a strong concentrated and aromatic decoction. This decoction is then mixed with hot milk and jaggery and served in a dabra set, the ultimate morning ritual in South India. Back in 1942, when the Indian government set up the Coffee Board of India, it used to have full control of coffee sales. Meaning farmers couldn't sell directly, instead all of the coffee was collected, pulled together and sold by the board. When India liberalized its economy in 1990s, something major happened. Coffee growers were finally allowed to sell their coffee beans to whoever they wanted. No more centralized restrictions. Coffee farming has also spread to new regions like Andhra Pradesh and Odisha on the east coast, and even to the northeast. One of the biggest examples of this is the Araku Valley, where the air is pristine. Farmers grow premium beans while preserving the forests. With the government support, tribal cooperatives, and substantial loans, Indian coffee has carved out a place in the global specialty coffee culture.
So specialty coffee in the Indian context is the new age indie cafes that are coming out throughout the country that are serving exceptional coffee quality with sustainability and traceability at its core.
Consumption has increased. The knowledge level of the consumers regarding coffee has changed. You see that people are moving towards picking better quality coffees than the 15-20 rupee coffees, which usually were bad coffees with a lot of chicory. This goes to show that coffee is becoming very mainstream.
There is more good news. Eco-certified coffee supports pollinator, reduces chemical use, and provides fair wages to farmers. When we choose that Rainforest Alliance certified coffee, we are contributing to biodiversity conservation. Climate change is posing serious challenges. Rising temperatures have made pests thrive in coffee farms, while extreme weather events like Karnataka's 2018 floods destroyed entire harvests. Meanwhile, there is intense global competition. Coffee powerhouses like Ethiopia and Brazil offer beans at lower prices. So what we as consumers can do about this? We need to remember it's more than just coffee. It represents jobs for farmers, protection for forests, and fight against climate change. By choosing shade-grown varieties and supporting local growers and roasters, we play an active role in sustaining India's coffee heritage while promoting environmentally responsible practices. Together, we can ensure that India's coffee tradition continues to thrive for generations to come. I know I couldn't cover everything about Indian coffee in this episode, but if you want to know more about Indian coffee, I have added all of the links and sources in the description. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.